Hey guys, Paul here. So I saw an interesting Yu-Gi-Oh topic on Reddit the other day, and I thought that would make for a kind of neat discussion video. I just wanted you guys' takes on it. So it's Yu-Gi-Oh cards that you only see played when a format's getting really bad. So basically, if these cards are being main decked for people, then it's kind of an indication that a Yu-Gi-Oh format's gotten a little bit out of hand. And this isn't me speaking really to the current format so much as just really like any Yu-Gi-Oh formats, because a lot of these cards have been around for a while, especially a couple of the ones I'm going to mention. So basically, I think of it like this. Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck building is something where you really want your main deck to be cards that are central to your strategy. Maybe there are some defensive cards in there, or like different tech cards that you specifically think will be useful against like your local metagame or maybe your one worst matchup. But there are also cards that you would rather have side decked, and if you feel like you have to main deck them, it's not a good thing. First card, and probably the biggest indicator of a crazy format, is Droll and Lockbird. This son of a bitch has been out for quite a while, and it's never a hand trap that you want to use. And the reason why is because, unlike pretty much every other hand trap, Droll and Lockbird does not actually have a like super great use case like just normally. So whereas like Effect Veiler can just negate an effect and kind of be effective, negate an effect and be effective. Interesting. Or Ash Blossom can, like just stop a search. They're really practical cards. Droll and Lockbird is not really ideal to have to play, right? Your opponent has to search with like a card effect or whatever first, and they still get to resolve that. So, they still got to use their terraforming or use their Rhoda or whatever. Then you use your Droll and Lockbird to stop them from doing it for the rest of the turn. It's always one of those cards that I don't really like having to use because I don't like that my opponent still got to get the search. And I also don't like that against some matchups it's not super useful because when you use it, you can't be sure that your opponent was even going to be doing any more searching. I've had lots of games where, they use terraforming and get something and I have to use Droll and Lockbird, but it turns out it was one of those decks that doesn't actually need to search a whole lot, like maybe it's like Guru Control, right? And they use terraforming to get Hidden City, but the truth is they already had the cards they needed and they're just still able to play. So when you think about it, if Droll and Lockbird's in the format, it means that it's probably one of those formats where the top deck is a really, really, really long combo search intensive deck that if it goes first will just beat you. And yeah, you need Droll and Lockbird simply to shut it down. I remember it was quite popular when Drytron was a big thing. It was quite popular to some degree when like Sky Strikers were around. I know it was sort of useful, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, pretty useful against like Spellbook Dragon Ruler days. Spiral for sure when the Spiral deck was around. Most tier 0 formats, when you think about it, Droll tends to find its way into the game. So yeah, so Droll and Lockbird's definitely a really big one that people, if people are playing it, things are getting crazy. The second one is Kaijus in general, and really anything that fits into that whole like kind of tribute monsters off your opponent's field just to wipe their field clean. They can't respond to it stuff. So Kaijus are the easy example, but I think older examples might be Lava Golem, Raw Sphere Mode. Raw Sphere Mode is around the same time as the Kaijus. But anyway, yeah. If these cards are ever having to get main decked, that's usually problematic. Nobody ever really likes main decking Kaijus. I mean, you certainly can do it, and some decks maybe have some small synergies with them based on their type or attribute or level. So that's kind of a different case. But usually, you don't want to have to main deck Kaijus. Siding them is fine. There's plenty of decks that have like a big boss monster that's tough to get off the field. You side in a Kaiju. But typically, if the big dominant threat of the day, like of the current format, is something that's like really huge and it's consistent and it's a threat, then you just need to main deck Kaijus. That could be any of the Towers-like cards. I know right now the Pirelli deck has sort of that same thing where you need to hard draw a Kaiju in order to out their Xyz monster. But I think of stuff like, Masterpiece, or back in the days of Cleafort, when they had Apple Cleafort Towers, people sometimes would have to run things like Share the Pain or Lava Golem or whatever, Volcanic Queen, like just to get rid of it. You don't want to have to run those cards because they're usually dead otherwise. They don't work with your strategy. But when you see them, you know it's not good. The next one's one that I'd actually almost forgotten about, but it makes perfect sense. A lot of people are mentioning this in this Reddit thread. Was Ghost Reaper and what is it? Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. So yeah, this is one where, for those of you guys who maybe don't remember like what this thing even does, you have to like use it when your opponent has like summoned monsters or whatever. They have monsters in the field, and you can reveal a card in your extra deck and then banish all their copies of that card. And so it's really good for basically kind of stopping a deck that is heavily reliant on a single extra deck monster, and it just feels imperative to get that thing like banished or whatever, like out of the way fast. But you don't really want to have to run it, because if you're running Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries, then it means that you're having to commit extra deck space to a card that you likely, it's not even like a part of your strategy, and you're having to run this because that thing is otherwise such a huge threat and so prominent in the format that you just don't have another choice. So yeah, now it's great when it resolves, because it can basically shut your opponent out of like playing their strategy. I know with like Burning Abyss, for instance, people would oftentimes use it to banish Dante, and that was usually a really good way to kind of ensure that Burning Abyss just couldn't function. And so there were like examples like that. There are a few others. But still, like I said about the Droll and Lockbird situation, it's a hand trap that's so specific, and you kind of like, against most matchups, like your Ghost Reaper just might be dead, right? But if the prominent deck is so troublesome and so like, just popular that you have to run it, then you just have to run it, and you have to kind of deal with this otherwise dead hand trap. And I'd say that the thing with a lot of these cards, you've probably noticed so far, is that they will do well against like a hyper fast kind of FTK, OTK, huge board style combo deck, but usually they have not much use against the mid-range decks, not much use against the slower trap kind of control decks. So you really don't like to have them. And then I'd say that the last card, at least the one that I saw a lot of people sort of agree on, it was a little bit more mixed, is Dark Ruler No More. I know this is a card that it's again been a side deck staple. It's kind of a card that's contentious because a lot of combo players feel that it's sacky and it should be banned. I've heard that argument made in the past, not as much recently, but Dark Ruler No More, as you guys know, can just kind of shut your opponent's field out, like negates everything, and they can't respond with monster effects. But typically, if it's having to be main deck, then again, it means a strong combo deck is in the format that is just so strong and just so like present that you need to have this card in your main deck to have a chance at playing. And that's not a very fun time. That said though, this one doesn't feel maybe as crazy to include in a main deck and stuff like that. Still though, it's there. And there are a few runner-up cards I'm sure you guys can think of. I know like Super Poly is kind of seen as indicative of slightly toxic formats. Everybody, of course, doesn't like Floodgates in general. And before it got banned, Mystic Mind to me represented not great things in a Yu-Gi-Oh format, and that was mostly in the formats where the combo decks themselves, like Sky Strikers or Sword Soul in the past, would be also running Mystic Mind because it was, they could do their thing and then like play it and stuff. I always hate when combo decks can do that, by the way. So yeah, those are, I guess, what you could call the four horsemen sort of cards of Yu-Gi-Oh! You guys can let me know in the comments if I left anything out. I'm sure there are plenty. But these are the cards where when you see people having to main deck these cards, it is not by choice. Nobody wants to, but things have gotten just that bad. So yeah, that's it. Just wanted to do a quick video on it. I thought it's kind of an intriguing topic, especially with my time in the competitive sphere. These cards kind of come on and off. So yeah. All right, that's going to be it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Pass turn.